Welcome to Mitchell Maths. In this video we're going to have a look at iteration. Right, now when you have iteration questions, quite often you have this formula which shows xn plus 1 and then you've got xn in the formula. Now what this formula means is that if you want to find the next term, say you want to find x1, you need to put the previous term into the formula, which would be x0, because that's xn plus 1. So for example, if you have x0, 7 minus x0 cubed over 15. Well, if n is 0, then n plus 1 will be x to the 1. So if you wanted to find x to the 1, you could have put x0 into the formula, because if 0 is n. If n is 1, then we'd have 7 minus x1 cubed over 15, and that'd give us, well, n plus 1, 1 plus 1 is 2. So every time you want to find the next term, you need to put the previous term into the formula. And we're going to start with x0. And now, there's a way you can do this on your calculator to make it a little bit quicker. What you do is just type in 1.5 into your calculator and press equals. And then you'll get it up as the answer. And what you do is you type in the formula, which is given to you in the question, 7 minus xn squared over xn cubed, over 15. And if you put the answer in if you put xn as answer, it'll automatically, for each term, it'll re-input the latest answer. So what you'd type into your calculator after you've put 1.5 as the answer, well, pressed equals, you'll put 7 minus answer cubed over 15. And then you'll press equals, which will give you your first answer, which is x1. And the answer to that one is 0.242. Then the next time you press equals, you'll get your x2 value, which is 0.466. And then you press equals again, and you get your next value, which is 0.460. And that's your three answers. Question 2. Show that the equation x cubed minus 7x minus 8 equals 0 has a solution between x equals 3 and x equals 4. To show that this equation has a solution between those two values, you need to show that one of them needs to be below 0 and one of them needs to be above 0. So let's put when x equals 3, and we type into our calculator just 3 cubed minus 7 times 3, take away 8, and that'll give us minus 2. And when x equals 4, we do 4 cubed minus 7 times 4, we're just inserting it in place of x, minus 8, and that equals 28. So what we can see is that there's been a sign change here. One's negative and one's positive, which means 0 must be between those two values. Therefore, the solution is between x equals 3 and x equals 4. The next part of the question says, by considering this interval, calculate the solution correct to one decimal place. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to input further values to find out where correct to one decimal place, which number comes closest to it. Now, if you look at your answers, you've got, for the last question, you've got minus 2 and 18. So it should be fairly obvious that the solution is going to be closer to 3 than it is to 4. If it had been the other way around, if it had been much closer to 4, I would have started with decimals near 4. What I'm going to start with is 3.1 because minus 2 is so close to 0. So when x is 3.1, it just saves you time if you start closer. I wouldn't go from 3.1 if it was like, let's say, minus 28 and 2. Then I'd start probably at 3.9 or something. Now, when x is 3.1, if you type that into, so 3.1 cubed minus 7 times 3.1 minus 8, and that equals 0.091, which is positive. So because 3 is negative and 3.1 is positive, that means the value must be in between 3 and 3.1. And what you need to do now is you need to see whether it's closer to 3.1 or whether it's closer to 3. And to find that out, you need to put the value that's halfway between them, which is 3.05. So 3.05 cubed minus 7 times 3.05 minus 8 is equal to minus 0.977, which is negative. So because it's negative at 3.05 and positive at 3.1, you know it must be in between those two values, so it's going to be closer to 3.1 than 3. So our final answer is x equals 3.1 to 1 decimal place. So it's really important to get that halfway point to find out which one it's closest to. There will be method marks, of course, for doing that. Question 3. Complete the table for the following equation. Well, you saw me doing a similar thing in the last question. All you're going to do is you're going to input those values, x equals 0, x equals 1, x equals 2, into that equation. And if you do that, you will get minus 18, minus 20, minus 16, minus 6, 10, and 32. And you can have a go at that if you want. Now, the next part says, between which two consecutive integers is there a solution for that equaling 0? Well, we know it's between 3 and 4 because minus 6 is below 0, 10 is above 0. So look, sometimes it might not always be equal to 0, so you do have to check whether it says another number or something. But we've got a sign change, minus 6 and 10. So we'll say, so which two consecutive integers is a solution? So we're between x equals 3 and x equals 4, and I'll just put sign change. Or you could put above or below, above and below 0. Choose a value of x between the two values found in part B and give a corresponding y value. So there's no strict number you have to choose here. It's just anything that's between 3 and 4. Obviously, you're not going to choose 4.1 or 2.9 because that'd be out of the range. You need to choose a value between 3 and 4. I'm just going to choose 3.5. And then you do, just like you did for your other values, you do 3 times 3.5 squared minus 5 times 3.5 minus 18. And that would give you your corresponding y value, which for this question is 1.25. So you've got, and for part D it says state a smaller interval in which the solution lies. So you need to look at, where does a sign change occur? Well, it occurs between 3, which is negative, and 3.5, which is positive. So you know because the change occurs there, you know that the solution is going to be between 3 and 3.5. So the way you'd write that interval is 3 is less than x, which is less than 3.5. So you're saying that x is in between 3 and 3.5. And that's how you do that question. And for the final question, so this is sort of a series of questions that comes up quite often in iteration. The first question is simply showing that two values, and that a solution is between two values, In this case, it's x equals 0 and x equals 1. So we just put those values. Well, it's going to be just 7 if you put x equals 0 in, because 3 times 0 squared and 12 times 0 is 0. So that's going to be 7. And when you put x equals 1, it'll be 3 minus 12 plus 7, which is going to equal minus 2. 7 plus 3 is 10. 10 minus 12 is minus 2. And you can see that they're above and below, below 0. So there's a sign change. Therefore, the solution must lie in between those two. Of course, it could always equal a number, in which case you could either rearrange it to make it equal to 0, or you could just look at, when you put the numbers in, is one below that value, or is one above that value. The next part is rearranging equations. So that's like you're changing the subject there. So if you're not that good at that, you might need to go and watch some videos on that. We're just going to go through the basic of the process here. So you've got 3x squared minus 12x plus 7 equals 0. It's not really like you're changing the subject you're not making x a subject as such, because you're going to have x squared on one side and x on the other. So what we can see is we've got x squared on this side, so that x squared we're not trying to rearrange to get that x there. But what we can see is that this x here is on its own, so we're sort of like making this x the subject. And what I noticed first of all is that it's negative, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it positive by adding it to the other side. So I'm going to plus 12x to both sides. I'm probably going to write this, so I'll write this side down first. So if 0 plus 12x is 12x, because remember it doesn't matter which way round there, which side you write the equals. Yeah, when it's equals, you can write it either way around. So I've got 12x on this side, because equals is the same as, and I'll have 3x squared. The 12x's cancel out on that side, and I've got plus 7. And to get x on its own, I need to get rid of the 12. And because when you write algebra 12x, that means 12 times x, and the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides, everything by 12. You have to divide every single term by 12. And if I do that, I get x equals 3x squared over 12 plus 7 over 12. And if I look at my answer, I've got x squared over 4. Well, 3 divided by 12 is a quarter. So x is equal to x squared over 4 plus 7 over 12. And when you get a question like this with B, where they give you the answer, you need to make sure you really do show your working, because all the marks are going to be given for the working. None of them are going to be for getting the right answer in the end, because they've already given you that. So as long as you show that you've added 12x to both sides and that you've divided by 12, both terms by 12, that should be enough to get you the marks for that question. And the last question is use the iteration formula, and you're going to start with x0 equals 2.1. And you're going to do the same method that I talked about earlier, where you're going to input 2.1 into your calculator and press equals to get it in your answer. And then you're going to type in answer squared over 4 plus 7 over 12. And every time you press equals, you're actually going to get closer to the value of x. And you know when to stop, because it's to 3 decimal places. You just stop pressing equals once it's stopped changing to 4 decimal places. You need to do it it needs to stop changing to 4 decimal places, because your 4th decimal place will determine whether you round it up or down. And so just keep on pressing equals until it stops changing, and then you can write it out to 3 decimal places. And for this one, it is x equals 0.709. You could even input it into your first equation just to make sure that's right. Right, thank you for watching. I hope you found that helpful. If you'd like to see more videos, please hit the subscribe button. And for practice questions, please visit my website www.mitchellmathsandscience.com. The link is in the description.